Bad attitude. Okay, that's us. That's the DMZ America podcast, which you are listening to at this very moment. It is Thursday, February 29th. Happy leap year 2024. I'm Scott Stantis, editorial cartoonist, coming to you from the right.
And I'm Ted Rall, editorial cartoonist, coming to you from the left. Just a minor correction, Scott. It's a leap day. All year is leap year. It's happy leap year for the last 2 months.
Okay, well, thank you for correcting me. I would hate to make that faux pas.
One of many.
I always thought that leap years were very cool. And as a kid, I really wanted to be born on a leap year, which would have been awful because technically, and my parents would have called in this chip, you only have one birthday every 4 years.
That's true.
My parents would have been fine with this. They would have been like, okay, Scott, you wanted this? I said, I didn't want it. I was born with it. But they said, no, you get one birthday every 4 years. But
It's
I thought it
your
would have
fault.
been fun to be 40 and you were literally 10.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wonder how, there's all those automated birthday greetings that you get, like from social media and everything, like, oh, happy birthday. You get all that stuff like from your companies and stuff, like your dentist or whatever. And it's kind of like, I wonder what they do with you February 29th people.
They
Like,
don't
what
do
happens?
nothing. Well, you guys had a bunch of technical problems on the show, on your radio show on Sputnik this morning. And I think it was because the computers were going like they did not understand.
Yeah, that's what we'll say it was. Yeah, it's like the 229 virus bug.
Yes.
Whatever.
The 229? You mean the 2K?
February 29th.
Oh, I see. Now I get it. I'm all caught up. I thought you meant the Y2K. Remember?
No.
That was going to destroy humanity. We're all going to live in caves and like fighting each other, wearing loincloths. It was going to be really.
I'm very sad that didn't work out, but what can you do?
I can remember, then we'll get actually talking about real issues, but what did you do on New Year's Eve 2000? Because I had my dad over with the boys. My boys were young, so we just waited up till midnight, banged some pots and pans, drank some bad champagne, and then went to bed. With the expectations, but did you go? Because I know I did. On my way to bed, I stopped by my little office here at home and turned on the computer just to see what was going on. Did you do that?
No, and I was not in a position to do that because I didn't yet own a laptop and I was traveling when that on Y2K. I was in.
Oh my God, you were?
I was in Petra, in Jordan, at the staying at the Movenpick Hotel, and at the gates of Petra, and that night there was a splendid party at the Movenpick Hotel. For all the New Year's attendees, and it was quite jolly and jovial. I sat at a table and feted the new year with the British ambassador and his wife, the British ambassador to Jordan, and a bunch of other luminaries, and it was a quite very pleasant time. And so the idea was to be somewhere interesting on Y2K, and it was a little too interesting. Because you might remember, if you're a student of radical Islamist terrorism, you may remember something called the Millennium Plot, one of Al-Qaeda's many projects. And if you look up the Millennium Plot was a plot that was disrupted by Jordanian intelligence that intended to blow up at 12 midnight on Y2K 15 of the top hotels in Jordan, including. Well, yes. So
did it happen?
No, well, obviously not. Jordanian intelligence disrupted the plot and arrested everybody involved. I don't know if it was one of those like the Gretchen Whitmer, it was a real plot, which it wasn't, or if it was an actual plot that they were really trying to do. But the Jordanians swear that it was a real thing. And I did kind of it definitely felt when the story broke, it felt spooky because it's like, whoa.
Oh man. Why Jordan? I mean, you would think that Y2K, this was before rather 9/11. So they could have blown up like the Eiffel Tower.
It was also before the Intifada. It was just a few weeks before the Intifada, and the reason that Jordan was targeted was because the Hashemite kingdom was deemed to be getting too close to Israel, And
Ah,
they were close to completely normalized relations, and recognizing each other diplomatically. And so, does that sound familiar? So the Al Qaeda decided to radicalize the situation. I mean, it's kind of a pattern that we've seen here in the Middle East, where basically when the world gives up on the idea of providing a state for the Palestinians, and then the Israelis start to feel normal, and then they try to establish diplomatic relations with moderate Arab countries, then a radical Islamist group will carry out a terrorist act like October 7th in order to radicalize the situation, scuttle those plans, and turn the focus of the world back on the plight of the Palestinians, which I have to say, it certainly worked very well on October 7th. I mean, the world's attention is certainly focused on the Palestinians. But yeah, anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about today,
no, it's not.
but here we are.
But here we are. Okay, well, back now to 2024. Mitch McConnell, of course, now currently the minority leader of the Senate, had been the majority leader, had previously been the minority leader, had previously been the majority leader, had previously been the minority leader, had previously been the majority leader, and had previously been the minority leader, because he's been in the leadership of the Republican Party in the Senate for, I think, since the 1950s, if I'm not mistaken.
17 years actually, but who's counting?
Well, it's still a record, which is pretty impressive. So at the age of 81, he's had a couple of instances where he was having a press conference and had brain freeze. And brain freeze makes it sound like you and I forget a word or something. This was like he literally just stood there stone-like and was not moving and or talking.
For a good solid 30 seconds, which doesn't sound like a long time, but it is a long time. If you heard 30 seconds of blank time on a radio, you'd be like, oh my God, you'd be hitting the side of the thing. It reminds me of these stories about Syd Barrett, who was the original lead singer of Pink Floyd, founding member. And he dropped way too much acid in The Summer of Love in 1967 and 1968. And by the time 1968 rolled around, he was completely fried. He was an acid casualty. And at performances, he would stand at the microphone and not sing or do anything. And so they had to sack him at one point. And, if you like Pink Floyd, Wish You Were Here, the U is Syd Barrett. And in the wall,
in this case,
and in the wall is all about Syd Barrett and what happened to him. And so the band became really obsessed with Syd Barrett and what had happened to him. But anyway, that's kind of like what happened to Mitch McConnell.
Mitch McConnell is the Syd Barrett of his generation. Anyway, he's 81 years old. He recognizes that he's unable. He said in his statement, where he got misty-eyed, that he recognizes his age has caught up with him and he's unable to perform the duties of leader. Although interestingly, he's going to step down from that role at the end of 2024, but he still has 2 years remaining on his Senate term, which he will fulfill as the senior senator from Kentucky. This is clearly, and I'm not sure if it's intentional. I really do think that Mitch McConnell was having health issues, but at 81, which is exactly, coincidentally, the exact same age as our current president, Joe Biden, how intentional was this as a shot at the current occupant of the White House and his age and his clearly diminished capacities? I mean, you can't help but make that connection, but was there literally, do you think that part of the alchemy of this decision was to show the White House, look, I'm doing the right thing. You should too.
I brought that up this morning in the show, and I think, I wouldn't be my cynical me if I didn't entertain that possibility. Look, I don't think in any way, shape, or form Mitch McConnell did this in order to stab Joe Biden in the back, but I do think that it's possible that he chose the timing in such a way. He knew that he was going to resign. He knew that he was going to step down. He's keeping his seat. But he's definitely not going to be, I guess this is the new thing, like Nancy Pelosi is keeping his seat after no longer being speaker. And, it's kind of cool because, you still have considerable influence. It's sort of like Pope Benedict, right? Like how he continued to have influence as the Pope Emeritus after he stepped down. And I think that it's sort of like that. They'll still be Pelosi's still important, very important. I think in a way she is really she's still kind of telling Hakeem Jeffries what to do, probably, or at least advising him.
Oh yeah, you'd be stupid not to, frankly.
She's a partner, and he would be stupid not to accept her help. And I think McConnell, it's the same sort of thing. He could have done this later. He could have done it earlier. He chose now. I don't think the fact that he is not stepping down from his seat suggests to me that he did have an option in terms of when to do this. It wasn't urgent. It's not like the ambulette was waiting outside his office to take him back to Kentucky. So the timing, but I mean, certainly it's also the thing about political messaging is sometimes it's really partisan and it's opportunistic, but it's still correct and ethical and right. And in this case, I would say this is one of those times. I think Joe Biden should take that, and the Democrats should take that lesson and say, yeah, it's like, it's true. I mean, McConnell did do the right thing. He is doing the right thing for himself, for his family, for his party, and for his country. And Joe Biden, frankly, is not doing the right thing for himself, his family, his party, or the country.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think that you and I have talked about this infinitum, but I'm sure people who listen to this podcast with any regularity are probably maybe getting tired of it, maybe not. But it just
if it's Joe Biden, it's like it's fresh every time they hear it.
Joe Biden was recently on Seth, what's his name, show?
Meyers.
One of those late shows, which nobody watches anymore. And why he picked that one, the only thing, you and I talked about this over the phone the other day, and I have to believe that the only reason that he went on that show is that it was a very favorable environment. They were very willing to work with the White House in terms of scripting the appearance and editing it.
Yes.
So when Joe comes on and starts talking about how much he likes cheese, you can cut that part out and go back to the scripted part. I have to believe that. I don't know that. Neither does Ted, but I'm just saying that just seems to me.
I do think that makes sense. And now we're being told, the latest is that in like the New York Times and people like, fake Republicans like Brett Stevens, they're saying things like, oh, just you wait and see. Joe is going to rock it at the State of the Union address. And that will allay everyone's concerns about his age and his mental competency. No, it won't.
No. Well,
No.
I thought when he, and I'm trying to remember which State of the Union address this was. Was it in 21 or 22?
I believe it was 21.
When he was yelling back at the Republicans, that actually,
Yeah.
I thought, well, he was lucid and he was, clearly that wasn't scripted.
Right.
And he did it. I mean, he actually handled that with great aplomb. I don't think he could do it again. Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't either. I don't either. I mean, look, here's the thing. Kind of like Jon Stewart said, if he's really that great, come on, we're all honorary members of the Show Me State, Missouri. Show me. So like, look, it's not our job to have faith in, in Joe Biden and the Democrats and the stories they tell. It's their job to convince us. It's like, I don't need to get interested in Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola is supposed to make me interested in their product. Biden's the product. Convince me that it's not been tampered like Tylenol in the 70s. Show me. Like, in other words, trot him out. Have him go out. Like, if he started turning up, like, the famous incident in the 60s where JFK turned up at the ice cream parlor and started shooting the shit with ordinary citizens, or if Joe Biden like started turning up in weird places, like, hey, he was at the Starbucks in Duluth. Tomorrow he's at, he went to a parts plant in Lansing. I mean, and this started happening a lot. Oh, he's doing rough and tumble. He did a town hall where he only invited Republicans who don't like him. Oh, he's like meeting with Sean Hannity, who's a total asshole. No preconditions, no timing. I'd be, do that about 50 times, and you and I are going to shut up about this, and we're going to admit that we were wrong. But until then, No, like show me.
Yeah, the fact is he couldn't do that in 2020. He had the advantage, and I know this sounds weird, but the advantage of the pandemic. He didn't have to go out and stump.
Right.
Donald Trump is going to have, as Donald
And
Trump
Donald Trump
does.
did anyway.
Well,
Donald
yeah,
Trump,
it had super spreader events, and they were
yeah, but
pretty.
it was a smart move. I mean, it's funny. It didn't win him 2020, but it might win him 2024.
Well, he's going to continue. I mean, Donald Trump doesn't do many new things. This is his MO. This is his playbook. So Donald Trump's going to have 2-3 rallies a day, and it makes him look, because the rallies have a high degree of energy, it makes it look like he has a high degree of energy. Frankly,
I think he does have a high degree of energy.
Oh, I disagree. I mean, for Trump, he doesn't.
There's no reports that he's like a big sleeping all the time guy. He seems like one of those guys who hardly sleeps. He's golfing all the time. He does a lot of appearances. He's also managing this giant business. He turns up in court all the time. I mean, let's put this into perspective. If the roles were reversed, right? Do you think Joe Biden could handle all the legal cases if he were the defendant? In all these cases, would he be able to do all the press conferences and show up in court sometimes and do the depositions? Would he, at the same time that he's running a real estate business and selling fucking gross sneakers and showing up to do that? Like, could Joe Biden do what Donald Trump does right now?
No.
And if anyone can if anyone can say different, fucking tweet at us and explain why, really, truly.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it, because, I neither of us are Trump fans, but we also recognize political
we're not going to vote for that asshole.
But here's the thing. Ted and I are both, I mean, when we talk about how Trump is doing something right, or this is effective or something, we're saying it as people who have been observing politics for, 4 decades. And we're not endorsing what Trump is doing. All we're saying is that, oh, this works. This is how this is effective, right. How this is not effective, how this juxtaposes against his opponent, who will obviously be Joe Biden. I mean, and the idea that you cannot, Ted, I mean, it makes me nuts in this profession. I can do cartoons that Joe Biden is physically not able to perform the duties of president of the United States. Well, you just want a Trump. You just want Trump. You just want Trump. I go, no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying the reality. Joe Biden can't be president because he's not physically able to be president. Now, and
even though his policies might be better than Trump's, although frankly, I don't think that's true. And we can get into that. But I don't. But I do. Do you want to get into that, or?
Sure, we got a few minutes.
Okay, well, I mean, so I was thinking about this. That's one of
it's our podcast. We can do any goddamn thing we want.
Good fucking point. So I do not understand, like, the Democrats who are saying, like, but Donald Trump is an authoritarian. He's an autocrat. He threatens democracy itself. Blah blah blah. All true. But you know what Donald Trump didn't do? Donald Trump didn't kill 30,000 people just for fun. He didn't do that. Donald Trump did not hold hands with the butcher of Tel Aviv, Benjamin Netanyahu, make out with him on international television, run interference for him in the most embarrassing, cringeworthy way at the UN and the World Court in The Hague. And Donald Trump didn't give him the weapons to kill 30,000 fucking people.
What are you talking about? Of course he did.
Well, he did. That's true. He did. But the point is, but not while he was doing it. The point is that Israel, this is by far, what's going on in Gaza is by far Israel's most heinous act since it was established in 1947. No question about it. Israel's been guilty of some really bad stuff. But this is by far the worst. And I mean, I got to say, if I had gone into this thinking that Joe Biden was a great socialist who had brought us all sorts of wonderful, like, socialized medicine, free college, $60 an hour minimum wage, red flags all over the place, and he held Benjamin Netanyahu's hand while he was killing 30,000 people, I'd be like, fuck Joe Biden. And that's where I'm at.
Well, and I Okay, well, there's a lot to unpack there. I'm going to disagree with you, but by turns, I mean, this, you're saying Donald Trump would be different? How?
He
There would be,
wouldn't, he wouldn't be different. But here's the thing, like there are other options. You cannot vote. You can vote for Dr. Jill Stein, RFK Jr., Dr. Cornel West. There are other options. Like you do not have to vote for one of these two assholes. And so like if I live in, let's say Nazi Germany had won the war, and now there were elections between like, it's Himmler versus Goering. Well, if Himmler doesn't win, then that means Goering wins. That would be bad. Like, no, it like fuck both of them. Fuck both of them. And it's like they can do this shit without me. I'm not going, if you vote for someone, that's an endorsement. You literally think about it. You say, oh, I vote for, caffeinated coffee over decaffeinated coffee. That's an endorsement. I like caffeinated coffee. It's like choice. You don't vote against anything. You vote for it. And like when you when you say like, I'm only voting to stop Donald Trump, you'd better be okay with the alternative, the person you are voting with for. And I'm not okay with him. So like, with Donald Trump, there are a lot of Arab Americans who they're very aware, better than I am, of like what a Islamophobic asshole Donald Trump is. But the way they look at it is, we're taking the long view here. We don't expect anything from the Republicans. They've never been there for us. But we might have a chance with the Democrats if we pressure them. And the only way we can pressure them is to withhold our votes and make them lose a couple of elections. And maybe they'll change their calculus and decide that we're more important than AIPAC.
well, so what you're talking about is what happened in Michigan, and we can touch on that real quickly. I kind of dismissed the protest vote. I didn't, it was what, 12 point something, 13%.
13%.
Of the Democratic people who voted in the primary voted for uncommitted. And while that might be,
curiosity, I always wonder, why would
yeah,
people even vote? Like seriously, why is anyone voting in these primaries at all? Like you're like Donald Trump, if you're a Republican primary voter, why are you voting for Donald Trump when you know Donald Trump's got it wrapped up? And ditto for Biden on the Democratic side. Just a question. You have nothing better to do on a Tuesday? Like what?
yeah. Well, and you're also a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat. You want to have your voice heard. You are a strong supporter of Biden and or uncommitted, or Congressman, oh gosh,
Dean
what's his name?
Phillips
Dean Phillips.
or Marianne Williamson, who actually unsuspended her campaign.
Did she really?
She's back
Why?
because she beat Dean Phillips without even running. She had withdrawn and she got 3% of the vote in Michigan over Dean Phillips's 2.7. So she's like, I should get back in. I'm doing great.
Because she beat Dean Phillips.
Because Dean Phillips is running hard and she beat him without running.
Of Minnesota.
The Lion of Minnesota.
Yeah, I thought, I mean, okay, there was a big concerted effort, especially in the Muslim community of Detroit, to get people to the polls as a protest vote, to vote uncommitted.
Mhm.
They got 13% of the vote. That's still, I mean, I'm sorry, that's a one-time thing. The numbers.
Well, it's not a one-time thing, because that movement's now spreading to other states. And it's not just Arabs, it's also college students and young people.
Well, okay, so it'll stay at 12%. Sorry,
I agree with you that it's not like a big, I mean, what are you saying? You're saying the numbers are too piddling to worry about if you're Biden?
Yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about it, but I would go into those communities. I would spend some time and some energy going into those communities, especially the Muslim ones, and saying, really? And replay Trump talking about Muslim Americans.
They're not going to care. They won't be moved by that. They're not going to be, Biden can't jawbone them. Anything short of something dramatic, like I would say nothing. I mean, I don't know that you'd have to sever diplomatic relations with Israel, but you certainly to get those votes back. And I think I did read one guy who said, well, if Biden can reincarnate 30,000 dead Gazans from the dead like Jesus, then I'll vote for him. But I do think that anything that is, he would have to come back with something pretty dramatic, like
well, you're going to have
all arms sales.
Yeah, that's
like
not
no more
happen.
Arms, no more weapons.
That's not going to happen. That will not happen.
Well, in that case, those votes are gone, which means Biden, and it won't take much for Biden to lose Michigan.
It's a toss-up right now. Michigan is one of the, I was looking at the polls this morning on Real Clear Politics from the toss-up states, all of which Trump is ahead, except Michigan, he's only ahead by like 1 point something%. So that's a toss-up. But the others were 6% or more. What am I saying? Nevada, Arizona, I think North Carolina, but Trump is ahead in all those, but we've got a long way to go in till the
I'm
election.
seeing Trump ahead in Michigan by 4 points, 3.6 points on the Real
Well,
Clear Politics average.
Oh, I saw 2 points this morning, the latest poll.
Oh, well, that's true. The Bloomberg poll. But if you look at the average, there's been a general downward slide. You're right. Detroit News poll had Trump ahead by 8 at New Year's weekend. Then you got to get a bunch of +2, Trump ahead by 2 to 4 points for an average. So right now you're right. The latest is 2.
Yeah, it's a toss-up. But I mean, that's got to be, to the Biden campaign, terrifying that if you lose those states that I just listed, you're screwed. You don't win.
There's no chance.
So yeah, we'll see I'm really dying I can't wait until the convention, the Chicago convention, which ought to be interesting. See,
Democrats have never had a problem with having a convention in Chicago. It's always gone really smoothly.
Oh yeah, smooth as glass, just smooth sailing. Yeah, it's been crazy how there's just no history there to speak of. But they have. Actually, if you remember, was it 92 or 96? God damn it, I'm trying to remember. When Clinton ran and had one of the Democrats met in Chicago.
Wait,
and it was
really? Because 92 was in New York. I was there. That's why I remember.
Okay, yeah, I think I was there too. Wasn't I? I don't know.
You're like Biden.
Yes, exactly. So
you're right. 96. It was 96. It was 96.
Okay. And it went and that's how smoothly it went. We don't even remember.
Well, that's also because it was boring. He was running against Bob Dole.
Bob Dole was running against Bob Dole. I respected him to a degree, but I also thought, what a terror. Why in the world is he the nominee?
Well, it was just his turn, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's what it came down to. It was so weird. Okay, quick story, and then we'll we're breaking, get to another subject, but you're going to love this, Ted. I'm not sure I've ever told you this, but I was there with some other cartoonists in 96. I was in San Diego, where the Republican convention was, and we were walking by. I was walking with Matt Davies, the editorial cartoonist now currently for the for Newsday out in Long Island. And we were just walking. We had the passes. You could check out the passes for an hour to walk around the floor of the convention. We walked underneath where the former president's row was, and Gerald Ford was just sort of staring at us and kind of sneering. And later that night, he had his stroke.
Well, there you go.
I'm not sure if he's like, holy shit, there are still editorial cartoonists, or exactly what was going through his head. But I mean, it was such a strange, and we stopped like under he kept staring at us. And we was like, and Matt and I are dressed in, Jack's sport coats and ties, and we're looking like, professional.
Sure.
I have, to this day, I don't know.
So you're saying that you killed President Ford?
Well, we gave him his first stroke, and then he died several months later. But so apparently we did. Yeah, but yes. And the short answer,
you joined.
Yes.
You joined. So it's like you and Oswald.
Yeah, well, Squeaky Fromm, more to the point, or what was her name? The other one, Moore. Remember, there were 2 assassination attempts.
Everyone remembers Squeaky Fromm for obvious reasons.
Well, because it's such a great, but Sarah Jane Moore, was that it?
I can't believe no one ever named a band after Squeaky Fromm.
Oh, you think that'd be a great name?
There's so many great band names. Yeah, there was Jodie Foster's Army, and there was Sandy Duncan's I have the single.
Yeah, punk rock was pretty cool. I told you I was in a band, a garage band, the worst band with one of the best names in the history of bandom.
Which was?
Lesbo Joe and the LA Eskimos. We were horrible.
Yeah, I'm not even going to get into my long history of bad, terrible musicianship.
Oh, I didn't know that. You were in a band?
Shh. People will hear you. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I've been in
Oh,
a
we're
couple, I've
okay.
been in a couple bands. They were all atrocious. I should be executed just on the grounds of
Just for
crimes
what you did
against
to music.
what I did to music. Exactly.
Crimes against the
If
culture.
right now, if right now a flamethrower drone were to appear at my window, I would be like, I have that coming. Yeah.
Okay, we're going to take a break right now, but during the break, I'm going to have to ask you what the names and what bands those were.
All right.
You are listening to the DMZ America podcast. I am Scott Stantis coming to you from the right.
And I'm editorial cartoonist Ted Rall coming to you from the left.
And we will return. As promised, we are back and we're alive. Praise God. I am editorial cartoonist Scott Stantis coming to you from the right.
Praise Jesus. I'm Ted Rall, editorial cartoonist coming from the left.
And speaking of praise Jesus, Texas just executed a guy who, they all say they're innocent until at some point, if they're guilty, they are really sorry about what they did, generally, not always. But this guy swore he had nothing to do with the murder for which he was recently executed. Alabama is now looking to tie down yet another death row inmate and suffocate him, because that's apparently the MO of the great state of Alabama, is because they couldn't get the lethal injection stuff. Because let's face it, if you're a pharmaceutical company, you don't want your name associated with, death. So they used nitrogen, which of course the atmosphere we live in is nitrogen and oxygen. The part we like is oxygen. So they just put a mask over his face and it's just nitrogen. You're essentially suffocating somebody to death. I mean, they may as well it would be cheaper and probably faster to just get a pillow.
True.
Because, but Alabama's going to do it again.
Probably be more humane.
Yes, it would be. And it would be faster.
Yeah.
And if you put it in Downey, you just smell like they were in a field. So anyway, so my point, but here's the thing,
Well,
Alabama.
Scott, let's not forget the real atrocity of the week in the death penalty capital punishment front. Thomas Eugene Creech, if you're a murderer or a serial killer, you are always identified by your middle name as well. That's how this goes. So Thomas Eugene Creech, let's just call him Tom Creech. He's a high profile serial killer who was put on, who was facing death in Idaho. This was talked about a lot in the national media because apparently he'd been on death row for so long that he'd gotten to be friends with the warden, all of the guards, they all knew him. And they were kind of like, okay, we know he did this terrible thing and he has this coming for sure, but we're going to really kind of miss him because we really like him. But anyway, for nearly an hour, on Wednesday, he was poked and prodded at his arms and legs. They were trying to look for a vein. 73-year-old guy. They couldn't find the vein, so they finally gave up. And now the state of Idaho is going back to the governor for a new death warrant, because that death warrant, they kind of like punched their ticket, and his attorneys are back in court saying, look, we have now proven that the state of Idaho doesn't know how to execute people. I would say, aside from the fact that I'm against the death penalty, I think his lawyers have a very good point. I mean, and my favorite thing in the AP story, they said, they interviewed a doctor who said, like, if you're under a lot of stress, it may be difficult to find your vein. And I'm like, well, I bet he might have had some stress that night.
Yeah. No, there might have been like, what's your last meal? I mean, that's a tough question. And I'm probably stressed over that. If someone's poking and prodding you to pump in poison into your veins, that would cause some stress as well. So, okay. So the death penalty, I mean, I'm against it on moral grounds. I think my feelings about the state, Ted. I don't like it and or trust it. And so to hand it the ability of life and death, that for any human being, I take umbrage to, but I also just think killing people is wrong.
You're such a rube.
I know. We have a pro-life, Alabama is one of the red states that went headfirst into the, no fetus left behind movement. And the Supreme Court, Ted, I know you like reading court decisions, do yourself a favor and read. The majority decision was written by Tom Patterson, who is the oh no, that's not his name. Oh my gosh, Tom. Oh shit, I'm
Tom
having a
Bodett?
senior moment. Yeah, that's it. He left the light on for you. We'll leave the electric chair on for you. Tom Parker. Tom Parker is the Chief Justice. He is, in the words, the technical terms, he is a fucking flaming idiot. I mean, he was genuinely stupid when I met him 20 years ago. He remains stupid to this day. And he wrote he's the Chief Justice. He's the one who succeeded Roy Moore as Chief Justice of the Alabama Supreme Court. His decision, he literally quotes parts of the Bible as the legal argument to support this law and say that IVF, in vitro fertilization, that embryos in a petri dish are human beings and hence should be treated as such. And if you throw them away, you're committing murder.
Or if in the case that precipitated this event, if you fuck up and drop them or forget to pay the power bill and they defrost, you are then you're committing manslaughter.
So the Alabama legislature, recognizing that this makes Alabama look even dumber than it actually is, has introduced legislation and fast-tracked it through the House. In the Senate, you have, of all people, Tommy Tuberville saying, IVF is never going to be taken away from you. This is, I mean,
is this a business decision? Because UAB is a major IVF place in the Deep South. I don't think Mississippi has one. I'm not sure that Tennessee has one.
I'm sure. I think I would imagine that Nashville would have one, or at least University of Tennessee there in Knoxville would have one. But business is certainly a big part of this. It's also religious. The popes have, this pope included, have continued to say that they oppose IVF as hurting innocent life, but Protestants think it's just Jake. The thing is, there are many people here in Alabama and across the United States, IVF have given them the opportunity to have children. I think you're one of them.
Yep, that's true. That's true.
But by turns, I mean, little cells, multi-cell things in a petri dish. Sorry, not, you could say that, legitimately say that that's not a human life and that's not protected by the law. And that law is being pushed on fast track through the legislature here in Alabama. It'll be signed by the governor. So we only look like rubes for a few weeks. But the fact is that we're a pro-life state, and yet we suffocate a human being to death. The irony of that, the hypocrisy of that idea has always galled me. And Texas being among them. Where was the failed attempt? Idaho, which is one of the red states, which is pushing, and these legislation is.
They should just throw potatoes at the dude. It'd be more effective.
Or just make him eat them, and just so he'll gain 300 pounds and die of a heart attack within him. It galls me to no end that, if you're going to say you're pro-life, you're pro-life. And I used to bring this up when I had a radio show here in Alabama, afternoon drive time. And I'd say this because I knew, I have to admit now that I was fishing for calls. And I'd say, you can't kill a death row inmate and say you're pro-life. And they would call up and say, the Bible says innocent life. I go, well, you don't know what those IVF.
Actually, the Bible doesn't say that. The Bible does it. The relevant commandment, I forget which number it is, says thou shalt not kill. Does not say thou shalt not kill people who are not total shitheads. It says, Yeah,
it's a hard position to take.
It's a hard stop there after the word kill. Period.
Well, and I would argue that if you're familiar with your Bible and you know the ending of the Gospels, it's not really a surprise. And spoiler alert, if you haven't read them, Jesus probably, if he came back today, would say, you know what? The death penalty sucked and you shouldn't be doing it.
I actually think it's amazing. The people who are so right-wing Christians, very few of them, I think, really have read the Bible, or if they read it, are capable of understanding it. Really, truly. I mean, I got to say, if you're a communist, man, you could do it. If you offered me this deal, we will live in a true Christian theocracy in this country where we get rid of the Constitution We follow the Gospels, the teachings of Jesus according to the doxology, and we will have a Christian court who determines everything, and we will live in accordance with the teachings of Jesus. I'd be like, done, absolutely, let's do that. So I don't know what religion these people think that they're studying or reading, because it's not in the Bible.
Well, they don't know either, and that gets spoon-fed
like when they talk about like the gay shit, like Leviticus and all that. And I'm like, okay, but the thing about being Christian is that there's the New Testament,
right?
And anything in the New Testament supplants the Old Testament when there's a contradiction, and there is a contradiction because Jesus died for your sins. Therefore, so and there's the don't cast the first stone thing. Also, this guy JC. I mean, I'd be all for it. I love Christianity. Great system, really great system. But this perverted version that we have, what the fuck?
Yeah, no doubt. So, you know what? I mean, I hate to say it like this, but fuck the guys who claim to be pro-life because they're and yet embrace the death penalty, especially the death penalty as it's now being performed in this country. Well, and there's 4 other countries that do it, and they all do like beheadings and in front of stadiums.
Yeah, it's like Myanmar.
I think Saudi Arabia.
In Iran, they hang you in public.
That would be.
Yeah, Saudi Arabia, they do the decapitation. Or if you're a journalist, you get goes a little differently.
Well, they chop you up and put you into bite-sized pieces, but it's those are the countries that we're in league with. So I guess Ted and I are in agreement. Sorry, folks, you're not going to hear us argue about this one. But
I mean, the thing is, look, here's the thing. It doesn't really nobody cares, because it only affects people who are accused of heinous crimes. And generally, we don't care about prisoners at all once you're sucked into the system. And, and these are often very poor people, working class people. Yeah. So, and it doesn't, and most people don't know someone who's going to be executed, right? But it's one of those like symbolic issues that you should care about. Like, if it's the kind of country, is this the kind of country that you want to live in? What does it say about you and me that we put up with this, that we vote for politicians who are okay with this? I mean, think about Joe Biden. He's a liberal. When has he ever once given a speech calling for the abolition of the death penalty? Never. And the point is, Barack Obama, liberal. When did he ever do that? Never. Bernie Sanders, when did he ever do that? Never. I mean, the point is, it's like, that shows you where we are morally. And it's like, that shit we should be crusading against. It's an easy lift. Don't kill people, Yeah.
Yeah. And you can make incarceration for life unpleasant. I mean, I don't think you can torture people, but I think you can make it.
I think it should be very pleasant. I think that, look, if you told me the penalty will be to be, I will spend the rest of my life in a luxurious suite at the Ritz-Carlton, and I can watch as much TV and surf the internet as much as I want, but I can never, ever leave that luxurious suite. Or even go down, I can never leave the hotel. I can go to the pool, I can go to the business center, I can go to the lobby, but I cannot leave that building. I would be terrified of being convicted of that, of a crime, and spending the rest of my life like that. That sounds absolutely horrible. I mean, wouldn't it to you?
Well, at this stage of my life, that's pretty much what I do anyway. So
it's like, no, come on, seriously. Be serious.
No, seriously. Yeah, no. I mean, losing your ability, your freedom would be horrific.
You will never be able to go wherever the fuck you want the rest of your life.
Well, not to belabor the point, but you have a system now that has gone to for-profit, which means they fuck these guys over every which way but Sunday.
Well, they're charging them like the Ritz-Carlton.
Yeah, it's like 50 cents per text if they want to send out a text.
A lot of jails charge you per night the equivalent of like a hotel rate.
Yeah.
Like $150 a night.
Yeah, we're for a lot of reasons but I think all you have to do is look at the criminal justice system and especially incarceration. And we have no plan to look at how do we end recidivism? Um, how do you reconstruct the prisoners so that they
We
can
don't
come
want
back?
to end recidivism. The recidivism is keeping the whole system going.
Ka-ching. Yeah, yeah, you're probably right, Ted. You're probably right. We're going to tie this up into a neat little, and the next segment is about life again, creating life, I suppose. It's a stretch. Stay with us. You're going to figure out what I'm trying to get at when we come
Okay.
back here to the DMZ America podcast for Thursday, February 29th, 2024. I am editorial cartoonist Scott Stantis coming to you from the right.
And I'm Ted Rall, editorial cartoonist, coming to you from the left.
So stick around and we'll tell you where babies come from. And as promised, we're going to reveal the secret of where babies come from on the last segment of the DMZ America, the podcast.
No, I don't want to know. It's gross.
It is. Oh my God. I'm real quick. I'm Scott Stantis, editorial cartoonist coming to you from the right.
And I'm Ted Rall, editorial cartoonist, coming to you from the left, blah, blah, blah,
Do
blah.
you remember when you first learned it was disgusting? I can't even
Yes.
imagine now. Kids
I know
today-
exactly how I learned.
Okay, go.
So my mother was at Wright State University in her getting her master's in education. She was an immigrant and she only had a bachelor's in France. But in order but she had to. So no, that's not true. She was getting her bachelor's here because when you come from a foreign country, you could be like a brain surgeon, but they won't even let you like put a Band-Aid on someone here.
Yeah, yeah.
So she had to go back to school. She was at Wright State University getting her bachelor's in education, and but she was taking it. There were a bunch of core curriculum classes, including biology. And so anyway, one day I asked my mom, I was a little kid, a wee tyke. Well, I was 8 years old. And one of my classmates at George L. Ernst Elementary School brought some porn mags, his father's porn mags, to school. And we hung out by the by the merry-go-round and looked at them. And this was the age, late 60s, of the giant bush. So things are mysterious. You kind of don't really see anything, right? It's like, I mean, I think back then it was like all women were Armenian. And so I came home, I told my mom. So I saw pictures of, the ladies' private parts, but it's full of hair and I can't see what's going on. How does sex work? How do babies? She's like, all right, let me get the biology book. So she gets the biology textbook off the shelf and she sits down and shows me the diagrams. And I'm like everybody, I'm like, what? No, like, come on. And I'm like, and she's like, yeah, it just goes in there. And she goes, and when you get excited, then while you're kissing a girl, things will happen. And then she might get pregnant. And I'm like, that sounds like that's astounding. Like that's a totally astonishing and weird thing. And I remember at the time thinking, I don't know if I told my mom this or I just thought it. I remember thinking, this is one of those things where it's like a lot of things like blue cheese, where you're like, I hate this now, but adults like it, so I might like it someday.
Sort of like beer, when you first taste
beer.
it.
Oh God. Yeah. Especially because the first beer I ever tasted was Bud. I mean, someone had given me a nice Goose Island IPA. I might have totally, that might have been, I might have taken to it at a much younger age.
Oh, that's funny. Oh my gosh. Yeah. No, when I learned about it, it was just like, that can't be right. I just thought, no,
my mom didn't lie to me. It was one of the things I really, really loved about her. I asked her about Santa Claus and she's like, it's a Nordic myth, 10th century bishop of the bishop of Nyssa, blah, 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 blah. It's like, so, and I was like, oh, that explains everything. Like, we don't have a fireplace. Like, it explains everything.
Ding. Oh, okay. So given all that, apparently somebody spilled the beans to Gen Z about where babies come from and that you cannot do it online. So Ted, there's a story that you stumbled across this morning that it's worth talking about. So go ahead and tell the folks out there.
What I found interesting is, so Bumble, which until recently has been one of the dominant dating apps in the United States, is in deep trouble financially, which came as a surprise to me because normally when you're selling sex and love and relationships, it's hard to go wrong. But anyway, this company is based in Austin, Texas. They're about to lay off a third of their workforce,
Wow.
350 people. And even though they're testing like AI stuff, like something called Photo Selector, which recommends this is actually a brilliant idea. Choosing your proper profile photo is challenging. You don't really know what makes you look best. So this AI feature goes through all your photos and recommends which ones would be the
Oh,
most
wow.
attractive. So they're testing all sorts of stuff. But anyway, this was very successful for Gen Xers and millennials. But now they're hitting a serious wall. Gen Z, which is aged approximately 11 to 26, obviously don't be dating anyway when you're 11 years old. But
Sound advice.
Gen Z, when you're people basically up into their mid to upper 20s, are not into this, and they are like not using the apps. When you interview people who are in that age group, they say they prefer the IRL experience. They want to meet people in real life through like networking in person, go to a meetup, go be part of a same political thing, meet at an old school, meet at a bar or a restaurant, at a museum. They want to meet organically. They're just not into it. They don't really explain why Gen Z is so different in that respect.
Oh, okay. Because I was going to ask, were they using it before and they just weren't satisfied? Because let's face it, a lot of these, not a lot, but and again, I'm going on very little knowledge. As I tell Ted, I was born married, so this whole thing is very foreign to me. But it seems to me the apps there are apps out there just to get laid, right? Just to have sex, like
like Tinder is. Although people have gotten married from Tinder and stuff, but yes.
Right. So what's Bumble? What's the difference
So Bumble is like it's more of a traditional, I think in all of these apps, right? Like Match or OkCupid or Bumble or I think there's Hinge. There's all these other, and then there's the more specific ones that are like related to a personal interest, like JDate for Jewish people or and people who want to date Jewish people. There's my personal favorite. I don't know if it's successful or not, but the ads are fucking amazing. Farmers only.
Oh yeah, no, I thought that was a joke. We're watching. I think the ad came on Hulu or something. It's because they have some weird ads on Hulu.
The ads are great. The ads are fantastic.
But it's like, oh my God, who? What? Wait, what? This is for real? And apparently,
because city girls just don't get it. So the thing is, most of these, except for like Christian Mingle, have a range of options for anywhere from, you could be looking just for platonic friends, you could be looking for a long-term romance, a short-term like romance, and then like short-term romance would be maybe like uncommitted, like let's just see how it goes, maybe, or just hookups. So it's the whole range of possible interactions are usually on offer, and people will tick whichever box they're interested in. Some of them are based almost exclusively on the photos. Others have extensive essays that one would write. Others have a lot of questions that you answer. But anyway, they all have different metrics and different algorithms. But the algorithms are then pair you up with likely people who live relatively close to you, and then you contact each other, and and then you meet, and and if it works out, it works out. And so the point is, though, 80% of people who are currently in college and graduate students do not use a dating app, which is fucking fascinating. These are people who live on their phones, morning, noon, and night. They're on every social media thing. They're doing all that, but they do not want dating apps.
Okay, stupid question alert. And because having come from a generation that did not have any of that stuff, you went out into the wild of bars and, like you said, museums or wherever. Why the change now? Other than I can answer for myself that it is far better to meet somebody in person than to look at their picture and go, oh, they're attractive. Let's see. Oh, they like animals. I like animals. Oh, they're bipeds. Hey, wait, I'm a biped. versus going to social situations, work. I mean, the normal places you meet people. Is that, I mean, that's got to be it, because the disconnect in the
Well,
social media
there's
aspect of
been
it
some
is,
studies about this. Online dating is a multi-billion-dollar business.
wow.
These companies are traded publicly on Wall Street. It is big, big business. So there's been a lot of analysis, and it seems that what's different about Gen Z from previous generations, including the boomers, is that these are people who really have siloed themselves by belief, and by other metrics that make online dating not work. Online dating seeks to match people up based on their compatibility in terms of being roughly the same age, being roughly the same level of attractiveness. Location obviously is important, and presumably like some common interests, values and stuff like that. Gen Z it's not like that. Like, for example, the vast majority of college students tell pollsters that they would not date someone who belongs to a different political party than they
Jeez.
do. Now, the same person would have no problem dating someone from a different race or a different religion, but they say because of these kind of like very interest-based self-identifiers, these are people who are looking to meet in person. So they feel like they'll have better luck going to, say, a Black Lives Matter protest, where they might meet like-minded people. Being like-minded is the important thing. It's not about being like-valued or like-looked, or the way it was for millennials and other older generations.
Well, that's curious. I always wonder, and I really do wonder, if I went on it and my wife, Janine, went on it, if we'd actually be matched. She'd probably get matched with someone way hotter and smarter than me, which would break my heart, but would be good for her, I guess. Anyway,
Don't let her watch this podcast.
I will absolutely not.
Okay.
Absolutely not. But the point I was trying to get to, and I've just remembered it again, is that Janine and I, for our entire up until recently, up until the Trump era, she's a registered Democrat, I'm a registered Republican.
Mm-hmm.
We have very different views. We voted very differently. In fact, in 1988, when we had our second kid, I tell the story often, where she made me stop the car on the way to the hospital. She was in labor, so she could cancel my vote in 1988. And that's an absolutely true story. What makes me crazy about what you just described is not values. You're not saying what values do you hold, but rather so they're using your
It's about
political
tribalism.
Yeah, they're using their political leanings to define my values, which is
Well, it explains so much about our politics, right? I mean, if you're a Democrat, part of being a loyal Democrat is in going out there and telling all your friends that you think Joe Biden is youthful and not too old. And if you're a Republican, it is part of your religion to go out there and say that he's being picked on, even though he hasn't done anything wrong. It's that kind of thing, right? It's like everybody, it's tribalism. It's like being, my sports team, right or wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
It reminds me a little bit of, like, remember the Penn State scandal? The coach couldn't have like raped young boys because, we love our team. Those two things don't follow, but yeah.
And how boring is that? Quite frankly, I mean, to have somebody who thinks differently than you is actually really invigorating.
I think it's helpful to be similar temperamentally.
Yeah.
But I think it's helpful.
And values. They're very important that you share the same
caring
values.
About the same things and not caring about, and not caring about other things. If you have, and it could be like not necessarily moral values. It could be like if one person doesn't sweat the small stuff, but the other one really nitpicks on like little details, those two people might not get along well.
Yeah. So but it's interesting that Gen Z is moving away from these apps, because I've known so many, and so have you, many people.
Well, they think the apps are corrupting the dating scene because they think the apps are only good for hookups. And one of the big criticisms of these apps has been that they provide an illusion of infinite choice. So you always feel like you can better deal. I mean, I know when I was in college, if I got a date at all, I considered myself to have like won a lottery ticket. Like I got a date with a fairly living, breathing human being. And like, we're going to go out to the movies on Friday. Yay for me. So like, even if things like, I find out that she's, voted for Reagan. I mean, my girlfriend in college did vote for Reagan, and I was pissed off about it, but I worked to make the relationship work. And, I mean, I think people tried harder back then because it was harder to find someone new. Now with the dating app, you're like, oh, yeah, I don't know about I don't like the cut of her knee. I'm out. Swipe left. Fuck her. I can just go back and find someone cuter. And so that's sort of like, there's always another cuttlefish in the sea, when you're on dating app, because there's thousands of matches. These are all people you would not otherwise. That's the thing that's like great about the app, is you can meet people you would otherwise never meet. But the problem is you can meet a lot of people. So it encourages, hookup culture in a big, big way. And I think young people have soured upon that. They really are looking for more permanence. And maybe they're looking for more permanence because the world that they live in seems so fucked up in terms of climate change, economically, politically, and otherwise.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Do you have, I mean, I have Apple products. This is actually relevant. And unfortunately, they're all synced. And so if I get a call, I don't just get a call on my phone. I get it on my watch, on my laptop, on my tablet, the chip implant.
I fucking hate that. I always disconnect all that shit.
So I apologize if I looked a little confused there for a moment. I had to
You're
block
having
it.
your Joe Biden moment, your Mitch McConnell moment.
Well, and there are plenty of farmers out there. I just want to just throwing it out there. For those of you who want, a spud boy or something.
City boys just don't get it.
We don't. We truly don't. Do we? I mean, let's be honest. If someone was talking to me about plowing, or I would have.
That's true. I wouldn't know what to. I wouldn't know I wouldn't know shit.
I wouldn't know what to do with that information other than, well, thank you for feeding the country. A grateful nation salutes you.
I mean, I am grateful to farmers, but
I'd
be totally and utterly clueless. Absolutely, no question.
Okay, well, all of that being said, by the way, this is totally has not apropos of nothing, but we mentioned Nancy Pelosi in the earlier segment. I just want to throw this out there very briefly, that there was a not a TikTok, but someplace on YouTube. It came into my feed somehow, and you can see this podcast on YouTube, by the way, which is really worth the effort. But it was the Nancy Pelosi investment club. In this, what they do is they, because she has to, when she buys a large number of stocks, she has to report them. And apparently it's public. And so these guys watch this, and time after time after time after time, Ted, she has bought, $100,000 worth of this stock. And then the legislation 2 or 3 days later comes out, and the stock that this was probably pretty much directly pegged to skyrockets, and she makes $1 million here, $2 million there. So if you're an investor, I would strongly urge you. Their record is remarkable. Investing the Nancy Pelosi way. And she's not the only legislator who does it, by the way. There's Republican, I forget what his name is, a senator.
No, it's kind of fascinating. Make corruption work for you.
Yes. Well, gee, how do you end up going to the Senate worth, say, I don't know, $1 million, and you leave, being worth 48? Yeah. Well, guess what, kids? So yeah, the system is rigged against you. On that note, Ted, where can we see all things Ted?
You can go, you can go to Sputnik News. You can go to whowhatwhy.org. You go to gocomics.com/Ted Rall, Rall.com, my own website. And of course, the Final Countdown with me and Angie Wong, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 12 Eastern on Sputnik. You could watch it on Rumble and X Spaces. You don't have to watch it live. Scott, where can people find all of your stuff?
You can go to gocomics.com/Scott Stantis, one word, see my editorial cartoons. You can go to gocomics.com/Prickly City and see my political comic strip. You can go to chicagotribune.com/opinion, see a gallery of my work I draw for them. You can go to Dallas News and see the work I do for the Dallas Morning News. And you can also hear me on Center Clip, which is a wonderful new app, newish app. It's coming up on over a year, I think. Anyway, you download it or you go to it online. These are mini podcasts, 30 seconds, no longer than 5 minutes. Ted's on it as well, and some other friends of ours. Quick takes on the events of the day. I love it because it gives me that outlet to say what I think about a breaking news story. And I know Ted does the same thing. It's pretty awesome. So centerclip.com. So for all of us here at the DMZ America podcast, thank you for listening. And until next time, I guess we're seeing the funny papers.
A grateful nation salutes you. Bye, Scott.
God bless America.
Happy Leap Day.
Happy Leap Day. See you again in 4 years. Bye.